So you need help choosing a job in Final Fantasy XIV as of Endwalker 6.1 by Lucy Pyre. There's a lot of jobs in 14, and sometimes it takes a little bit of finessing and finagling to figure out what you want to play.
So Daddy P tells me you're stuck trying to pick a class. Oh, don't be scared, friend. He has eyes and ears everywhere. It's all according to his keikaku. Keikaku means plan. Anyway.
Yoshi P is everywhere. I also take immense enjoyment and pride in the fact that Yoshi P is a Black Mage main. Black Mage mains rise up.
He sent me here to help you, but between you and me, I'm probably not the absolute best person for it. I'm not an expert on every single job out there, but you know what? I have leveled almost all of them to 90. Can you guess what I got to show for it? That's right, opinions. Possibly of the bad variety, but I'm confident that at the end of this video, you're gonna be able to look back and say, yeah, those were definitely some opinions. But
they were opinions of all time, might I add. No, and that's honestly the thing, is everyone's going to have their favorite class. Everyone's going to have their opinions. And honestly, I mean, I'm in the minority of Final Fantasy XIV players. I want all my stuff at 90. As of recording this video, we are now entering Shadowbringers after Hildebrand. I got to make sure I catch up on Hildebrand because apparently some Endwalker Relic stuff is in world state changes in Shadowbringers at least. But I mean, I can tell you I'm a Black Mage main. I can tell you that I love Samurai. I can tell you that Dark Knight, at least through 50, just wasn't my cup of tea, right? And that being said, you're going to have some Dark Knight mains that are going to be like, Kip, what do you mean you don't like Dark Knight? It's not that I don't like Dark Knight. It's that I'm not a Dark Knight main. I'm not a Bard main. There's certain mechanics I don't like. And Gunbreaker, as far as I'm aware, is generally kind of divisive in regards to how it functions. And it's a tank that just functions a lot differently than your standard Paladin, Warrior, or Dark Knight. Everyone's going to have opinions is what I'm trying to say. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if anything, I argue it's the fact that we have all of these differing opinions that make the game even better, right? We can all engage in the Joe Cat meme, suck at Black Mage. And, absolutely, I do agree with you to an extent. Suck at Black Mage as a Black Mage main. Whereas you're going to meet other people that, they will swear and live by Black Mage, they'll swear and live by Samurai is just the Black Mage of melee DPS, or they'll say, Reaper just beats out Samurai 100% of the time, even though Samurai and Reaper kind of flip-flop on who's highest physical DPS as far as I'm aware, patch to patch. But, I mean, just enjoy what you play, realistically. You can go for the meta things, absolutely. You can also just have fun. I know it's a foreign concept to a lot of people.
First, a little disclaimer to help guide you through this video. One, in all seriousness, nothing I say can be completely objective. I mean, I could be objective by only talking about their spells and skills in depth, but I don't think that helps people choose a class. Generally, people are interested in how a job plays, not the rotational details that they'll have to learn in-game anyway.
And so on that, there's the whole joke that every expansion Summoner changes, right? Summoner used to have as far as I'm aware, it was like a 3-minute opener to their rotation, right? We have come a long way since then. So absolutely, we can go into a 6.1 back in Stormblood. We could have gone into a 4.1 opinion piece, right? Absolutely. And just like, okay, objectively, this is how you play the class. These are the rotations you're going to have to do because of this. These are the damage. But why though, right? I feel that it becomes more mechanical, and someone like me might take interest in it, at least in a short-term capacity, right? Okay, I'm looking at Samurai. What is the rotation that you're doing with Samurai? Oh, you're opening with your the funny little combo button that makes you autocomplete combos, right? Oh, no, that makes a lot of sense, and that makes your DPS go through the roof, right? How do you play Black Mage, right? Well, generally, you're going to start with Ice 3, and then you're going to go from there, right? And there's a number of things on how to optimally play the classes, and I firsthand can tell you, the way I was playing Black Mage from ARR, and now having access to the full kit through 90, it's night and day. It's night and day. Final Coil Bahamut, fighting Bahamut, I've done it once. The timing is a little tight on that. But you can phase Bahamut. You can solo Bahamut without him getting to the whole sequence where you're having to go around and kill the Mirror City dragons, right? You can one-phase him. You cannot as melee DPS because I think the threshold of melee DPS is a lot higher, so therefore it thresholds you. It will actually hard threshold. Buddy was playing as Reaper. He couldn't one-phase Bahamut. I got close a few more times. I've only been able to do it once. But going back to the core root of the issue, we could, from an objective standpoint, go, these are the best damage numbers. This is what you're going for. Black Mage is potentially useful in this situation because this boss uses magical DPS, and Black Mage is a higher magical resistance, so therefore it can kind of be a pseudo tank in this one specific instance. But what's the fun in that, right? There's people that absolutely will play games like Path of Exile and have your spreadsheets open. There's other people that just want to play the game. As long as you remember your tank stance and are doing your rotation, Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
While you can take this with a grain of salt if you want, I am right on the edge of being a filthy casual. So I think my perspective is as close to a sprout as a veteran can possibly get. Too, the visuals in this video are not a representation of the actual job rotation, but more of a skill and spell showcase. Only
Right.
use the rotations you see in this video if you've gone completely feral and want to be reported for griefing. And
This 14 is very, very good about that. There's a couple times where I haven't actually had that come up in my several hundred hours playing at this point. I spent 300 ARR, of course. However, it hardly comes up. I honestly forget that there's buttons, like if someone DCs, like they hard DC mid encounter or mid roulette, there's actually a button to start finding another person. I actually have had to use it like twice in my hundreds of hours playing. So it's actually a very neat and legitimate community. And I mean, obviously, if you're going into something like Omega Savage, right? Or if you're going to something like Ukob, I'm assuming, there's going to be you should probably know the rotation. Me personally, as somebody that got carried through Omega Savage, and I mean, some of those bosses were amazing. 04S, 08S, and then 012S. And seeing 012S be soloed effectively phase 2 by a paladin was absolutely beautiful. There's a very high skill ceiling for that, and it rewards you knowing your rotation. Just, you don't have to be perfect. Understand that. When you start going for harder content like Savages and Ultimates, okay, absolutely, we need to have a discussion there, right? But if you're just going through your roulettes, once again, you remember your tank stance. You remember to get your Wind Bite and Poison Arrow up. You remember to, not attack mobs so much on the pole that they de-aggro off the tank, right? We're going to have a fine time.
finally, number 3, remember that the best method of choosing a job is picking the one that looks fun to you.
Yes.
You're not gonna like the game if you pick a job based on what some stupid cringe lord said on the internet. So
I will say, as this does actually apply to me, Black Mage, suck at Black Mage, right? Black Mage is a job that I will argue you have to have a higher mechanical skill and understanding of the game to play. There are things I will not go on as Black Mage, not at least right now, right? I would not go into, I'm not going to spoil the boss, I would not go into 08S, right? Those that play 14 know what I'm talking about. I would not go into 08S right now as a Black Mage, because with Black Mage, even if you have materia augmented gear and you're doing it unsynced, right, which, I unsync a lot of stuff. I try to see what I can solo unsynced at this point with Diadoko's gear. It turns into a situation where, because with Black Mage, and we'll get to this in the Black Mage section, you have to root to do your casts, right? And if I'm fighting someone like the final trial of Stormblood, no spoilers from me, the final trial of Stormblood, right, where there's definitely some AoEs you have to be cognizant of because of the arena, especially in the EX version of that. I might want to go in as like a samurai first, or I could just go in as a 90 warrior, because warrior's got that sustain up the wazoo. It's actually kind of nutty. It's not that I don't like using Black Mage, it's that, in my opinion, for me to use Black Mage, because I also test myself and push myself mechanically. See Destiny 2, I run planets, Encounter 3 and Root of Nightmares duo now. I just do duo planets now. It's just fine. I like pushing myself. I want to have that experience before even attempting to take Black Mage into, certain unsynced or even certain synced content, right? I felt really proud of myself knowing the 90 Black Mage rotation, being able to quash it down to 70 and do the final dungeon of Stormblood, without dying. I was very, very impressed with myself. And you can even see that growth. Once you know the rotation, your growth, you will see it. You will actually see your progress in the damage numbers.
So all other advice comes second to your own vibe check.
Yes.
Also, I'm gonna put 2 terms I'll be using up on the screen, so pause here if you want or need to read.
Yeah, off global cooldowns, OGCs, when your global cooldown is still rolling. So, for example, if you're playing something like, what's a really popular class out there? If you're playing, I was going to say Black Mage, but if you're playing Samurai, right, you know how your big combo hitters, how you're building your combos, your 1, 2, 3, and then you get the little sticker, your 1, 2, 3, your other 1, 2, 3, you get the sticker, and then your 1, 2, you get the third sticker, right? So, like on that, right? Getting all of your big combo pieces are your global cooldowns. You have other things in your kit, that you can activate at any point. Arm's length is technically an off global cooldown as well, right? Where it's, an instant and you can fire it while your main things are on cooldown. We've been using an OGC between GCD usage without clipping. Exactly, right. So, in certain dungeon situations like that, I could for Black Mage specifically. It's not Xenoglossy. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but I'll actually start weaving in one of the instants that give me one of the little polyglots. I can't remember what it's called offhand, but I'll do that and I'll have to weave it in, and that's how you start using things more efficiently. You have your main combo, which are your globals, right? Everything is on a global cooldown, and you start weaving in off globals depending on the situation, right? Your mid combo and red armored hammer dude, see, no spoilers, from ARR from Praetorium is about to bust the floor and send you flying. Oh, I'm gonna do combo arm's length and then go my second combo, and by that time you're about there. The interesting thing about Black Mage specifically on this is that they have the same global cooldown times, but it's the channel is up front, if that makes sense, rather than hitting it, channeling it, and then casting. It's almost the inverse, which is interesting. Slide casting as well. Black Mage, I can tell you, I've had to use this a number of times. There's an emote trick to that as well. I'm sure Lucy Pyre might go over. And if not, all you need to know is because of server tick, there is a very specific window about, I think it's 4/5 from the end of the cast bar. You can actually move and it will still complete the action. Because normally if you're channeling an action and you move, you can't complete the action. That is slide casting in a nutshell, and there's a couple tricks to it.
Read it. Otherwise, if you don't care or you already know a bit about MMOs, let's get right to it. Tanks. This is the role you want of being insanely overpowered as your ultimate fantasy. Let me kill one common myth that stops sprouts in their tracks. Tanking in this game is not hard. Maybe it is in other games, but it's definitely not in this game.
It's really not. I will have to agree with this. As somebody that is, I would argue, a professional dingus, if you will, right? As somebody that's a professional dingus, it isn't that hard. I mean, Warrior has a self-sustain built into the kit. Paladin, I've seen firsthand Paladin unsync O12S second phase. First phase is kind of weird because of the ram mechanics between the two enemies. No spoilers, right? But second phase, I mean, I've seen it. It's absolutely wild. Dark Knight, people call it blue DPS for a reason, and Gunbreaker's the one that is a little fuzzy to me. I am finishing all the other tanks before I organically go through because of how divisive I've heard Gunbreaker is.
Taking aggro is as easy as turning on your tank stance and hitting one AoE. Bam! All the enemies hate you now. Tanking is extremely approachable, and it's also very forgiving. If a DPS can only afford to make 2 mistakes before dying, you can make 3 times that amount and literally shake it off. In fact, it's so easy that most of the time you'll be pulling several mob packs because enemies just don't deal enough damage to make you feel alive otherwise. So make sure your gear isn't broken before any duty, and keep your eye on the party to check that you're going at the pace that everyone seems to want.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for this. Absolutely. The tank controls the tempo of the party 100%. So what I mean by that is, if, say, I'm running something like Ormvale, or say I'm running something like Praetorium, or say I'm running something like what's a good example? Alamigo, right? Say I'm running any of these duties, right? And, absolutely, there's nothing stopping me from hitting tank stance, sprinting, and because I have tank stance on, just AoEing every group of mobs. One of the bigger ones, Brayflock's Longstop. Wow, tongue twister. Brayflock's Longstop hard. Wow, that was hard to say. Try saying that 3 times fast. But that one on the hard is a tank check if you want to go wall to wall, and it shows how to meter your party. I can't do a full pull on hard. I'm going to totally just state that right out the gate. But that is a huge skill check for tanks from everything I've heard in Twitch chat and comments. So there's nothing stopping me from doing a wall to wall pull. That I've done it, a few times in Stone Vigil. That being said, if your healer can't keep up, or if your DPS maybe have a subpar rotation, right, and you just start taking a bunch of damage, you start popping your hallowed ground, your home game, your oh crap button, so to speak, right, suddenly you start running into issues. And it becomes a little bit of a problem because you as the tank kind of get clowned on sometimes. Like, I'm going to totally just admit, sometimes you as the tank will get clowned on. And it's the tank that will control, are we doing single pulls in Stone Vigil? Are we pulling one group of enemies? And absolutely, I've had groups that I found in roulettes that, they can't do not single pulls. It takes more time, absolutely. But realistically, if you can't get the heals, if the DPS and the healer are getting overwhelmed, you have to slow that down. That being said, if your healer is absolutely cracked and they're just like, I'll pull however you want, and they keep you above 80% that whole time, pull wall to wall. Absolutely. Just manage your mitigations and, manage your expectations. Don't play stupid, quote unquote, so to speak, but you can do wall-to-wall pulls all day. And it comes down to, in being a tank role, you have to understand where your party's at. And sometimes you don't even, like, a lot of the times I'll just like, okay, we're having issues with triple pulls, I'll go down to doubles, and so then we do double pulls and it's fine. You don't even have to have that assumed information. Sometimes you can just type in, hey, just wanted to see, how do you guys feel about pulls? Do we want to do wall-to-walls? Do we want to do doubles, singles, triples, right? Just ask if you're not sure. And if anyone gives you crap about that, I mean, I don't know what they're expecting, but at least you asked, right? You have done everything in your power to be that force of positivity, so to speak.
Paladin is for people who like the Holy Knight aesthetic, or people like me who simply couldn't stop themselves from simping for Link as a child.
That's
it
a
goes
mood.
through a physical and magic damage phase, and as of 6.0, it has incredible self-healing built into its core rotation. They have
I think they did nerf. I hear Holy Sheltron is absolutely cracked. I think they nerfed Clemency. From what I hear in the server, Discord servers we've been discussing, Paladin at higher levels in Endwalker, 90 Paladin and Endwalker used to be able to solo bosses, I think at like 70% HP and above. They've nerfed something, I think it was Clemency, but it is still one of the classes of all time in the game. Like, it's nutty seeing a Paladin just go through content and just never ever die.
situational utility that isn't often needed but can be a run saver when it is. Out of all the others, they probably fit the role of pure tank the best. They've got strong defensive cooldowns and they fit the aesthetic of protecting the party well with skills like Lumency, Intervention, Cover, and Passage of Arms. The high-level rotation can be a bit tricky to learn for a completely new player, but it starts off very simple and lets you get used to skills as you level up, just like
I would argue, in at least A Realm Reborn, I think Paladin is the best tank. Let me as somebody that's been going between Paladin, Dark Knight, and Warrior. I'm after ARR, Warrior really starts to shine. Warrior really gets that gas going with some of the self heals and stuff that they get. In A Realm Reborn, you have access to, I think it's Rampart, their 30% mitigation, Reprisal, which is the 10% debuff to enemies around you. You have Sheltron at that point, which is your I think it's an OGCD, right? Your OGCD 10% 4-second mitigation. You also get later on a like 6%, like, no. You get the group one. It lasts for 6 seconds. I think it's like 5% or something like that. I can't remember offhand. But you effectively, even after AR going into Heaven's Ward, you do have a full rotation at your disposal. You have a full like mitigation rotation. Paladin just tanks super hard. If you want to turtle up, if you want to engage in like Centurion, like, we are here, this is the wall, I am the wall, I'm coming your way, right? No, you're going to pay attention to me, because Provoke exists to pull aggro, right? Still, if for some reason it gets pulled off you, or if your off tank takes it off you and you need to retake it off your off tank as main tank, right? Like, Paladin just, it works. It goes super hard.
like a white knight, he starts gentle. I'd say you should pick this if you like a bit of complexity and the idea of helping the party when needed sounds fun for you. Warrior has an Oonga Boonga reputation, but real Sigmas know that going anime-style berserk and out of control is just as edgy as having your own shadow. Fitting with this aesthetic, they press a button, go crazy, and this magically allows them to auto-crit. Game logic. It's easy to pick up and learn in a short period of time, and they have insanely good self and party healing to the point where they don't often need a healer at max level. They're also—
Is Lucy playing on controller? What an absolute Chad. I couldn't do it. I clicky my buttons. What an absolute Chad. Like certified Chad behavior from Lucy.
strong in the defensive cooldown department though, with plenty of options for tank buster mechanics. As a caveat, it does have the lowest DPS of all tanks currently, but the difference between each tank is so marginal that it doesn't change the fact that this job is very powerful. Maybe.
This job is incredibly powerful, so I like Heaven's Ward going forward. It starts to get a lot of its gas. It gets its 10%, it's like a 10%, it's either 6 to 10 seconds that it lasts, but on proc it's a 10% mitigation, and any damage that you do, you actually regen some HP. I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 or if there's a specific percentage. I can't remember offhand, but Warrior starts to go with that self-heal reputation really quick. And then I was actually really confused because we're going through these Stormblood class quests. The last one was, I think, the only skill you get from Stormblood class quests. Oh boy, is it a doozy. It's your Berserk. I think it's like 3.0 at that point, because you have your ARR Berserk, you have your like enhanced Berserk, and then you have like whatever's at Stormblood 70. And it's like you just get like 3 free uses of your big hit of your like Fellcleave. And I think it also I think it also doubles as an armed link. I have to read it again, but it is absolutely bonkers. And so yeah, I'll go into like Alexander, or I'll go into what did I went to like Dunscaith. I got Dunscaith in roulettes today. Oh, that's the first time I've gotten it since I've had to natively do that. Right, I had to actually hard queue for that for progress, and I just didn't die. I mean, I had like 3 to 4 Vuln snacks at one point, I'm pretty sure. I just didn't die. As long as you're cognizant about your rotation, you have your 10% mitt, you have your equilibrium as an oh crap heal, you've got your home gang. Every tank kind of gets their oh crap button, right? Like if I'm doing a pull and arm veil like I did today, and the healer's having a little bit of trouble healing, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to pop home gang, because it's like for the next 10 seconds, most attacks in the game cannot kill me. I will only be at 1 HP, and which is a double-edged sword, because if it's already a losing situation, maybe you shouldn't pop home gang, but that comes down to tank knowledge and kind of reading the party, so to speak. No, warrior right now is my preferred. I absolutely love it, but I will be hard switching between this and paladin when I start soloing endgame content, because Paladin's Bulwark is very interesting in how it works. It's, I think, similar to a 20% mitigation, but it's not worded in such a way, or it's because you're using the shield, and the shield now has a 100% block rate. It's really interesting and intriguing, but, you know, it doesn't quite have a full-on mitigation rotation like Paladin does, and Paladin also gets Clemency, which, I mean, starts to kind of cover that gap. And it wouldn't surprise me if it has the least DPS of the tanks. At the very least, it's got some killer survivability. So if you're wanting that kind of like, I have a lot of big HP, I want to regen, I want to just not die, you might want to check out Warrior.
Even too powerful. Don't let the warrior mains hear me say that.
That's the
I'd say
one.
this is a good choice if you like being self-sufficient and you value simplicity in your gameplay. Dark Knight is the misunderstood teenager of the bunch with deaf parents that just don't understand him. Like Paladin, it also deals magical damage, but they have no cast times to speak of because they're afraid they'll look stupid by just standing there casting. This job received some good changes in 6.1, making it more approachable to new players and giving veterans the strongest sense of euphoria since the release of female Viera. If your main selling point is dark aesthetics, they've got tons of that packed into this job, and damn is it sick. Their rotation is similar to, but a bit more difficult than Warrior, as they have several off-global cooldowns to handle. Unlike Warrior though, they're not very blessed in the realm of self-healing or defensive cooldowns, with far less options than any other tank. In exchange,
they really do have a lack of mitigations, at least through 50. I actually, full disclosure, ended up buying a skip, but I have enough mechanical knowledge that I'm going to be able to actually get the 80 rotation down pat. And that's the thing, is like, don't ever, if you want to skip content, if you want to skip levels, that is perfectly fine. However, I would say healers don't ever skip, because that is a rough one. Healers are going to test you mechanically, like very, very much. And it's not just you have to worry about the tank, you have to worry about your entire party and stuff like that. So healing is the one role, the jobs that I would say don't skip on. Tanks, they're pretty intro easy, and if you have a good mechanical knowledge, I say catch up is going to be fairly easy. I've been told skip Gunbreaker, but once again, that's a really interesting discussion in itself because of how Gunbreaker apparently functions.
for these flaws, they do currently have the best DPS of all tanks.
Yeah.
So I would pick this job if you like to
TPS.
deal big damage, and the difficulty curve doesn't turn you off from tanking as a whole. To round off,
Let's put it this way. I picked up Machinist, and I was like, oh, this makes sense. And it is one of the most mechanically taxing classes in the game as far as DPS goes. It is wild. Or like someone teaches me the Black Major Samurai rotation, or just sends me like PNG, this is your rotation. Ah, cool, I could do this, right? And because I can pick that up just easily, Dark Knight's going to be great. I have the few mitigations, yes, absolutely. And, you know, I kind of offset that by the sheer amount of just big damage that you do. And, you know, there's a couple of your skills that require like the 3000 MP to actually cast. Like, they require a lot. They're big hits though. So that one I'm not too worried about. If you do want to feel like a DPS, if you want to fulfill the role of a tank, to have all the aggro on you and to have your edgy berserk armor, and you want big swords, and you like big swords and you cannot lie, right? I would argue you should absolutely go ahead and give Dark Knight a try. My buddy plays Dark Knight. He wasn't aware that the tank stance grit existed for Dark Knight, and I just was like, what absolute Chad behavior. And we ran the whole dungeon without tank stance. It was actually really fun. But yes, even though you're classified as a blue DPS, remember your tank stance. If you put your tank stance on, don't take it off. For those of you that are new and don't quite understand what tank stance is, it is a toggleable, as you cannot see on this bar. That's because that's provoke. Every tank does have a button that you turn on, and it toggles itself on and off. And you'll even see the color change a little bit, and it will say enmity is increased. That means that you just gain passive aggro, so to speak. So how you go through and do polls is that you turn on your tank stance. You are already receiving more aggro than your allies are receiving. You hit them, which makes them even more aggro, so your allies can hit them X number of times before they start pulling aggro off of you. Turn your tank stance on. Please remember your tank stance. As somebody that will completely forget that the tank stance completely turns off when entering a new instance, please remember your tank stance. Just get into the habit of checking your tank stance every single time. Mine is generally always top left.
Off the tanks, we have Gunbreaker, a fast-paced heavy hitter that's great for either rabbit squirrels or caffeine addicts. It has the second highest DPS of all tanks because it just presses its buttons harder than anyone else. Why didn't the other jobs think of that? Their cartridge system gives them access to special moves that are guaranteed to boost your serotonin levels. Now, I'll be honest and say I don't think this job is extremely approachable to new players, especially if it's your first time tanking. The rotation is fun and enjoyable to learn, but can be punishing when trying to manage defensive cooldowns on top of it. But don't let that...
I do hear there is a skill that Gunbreakers get that everything will just become a ranged attack. Like it's an AoE party effect that it will just make things count as ranged attacks, I think, which is kind of cool, actually, if that's actually a skill. There's a lot of cool stuff that a lot of these kits get, and I would have to agree with Lucy on this. As somebody that really hasn't approached Gunbreaker, yes, it does have big gun, it does have big revolver. However, I would recommend starting off on either Baby's First Healer Paladin or just going hand into Unga Boonga Warrior, because realistically, you can't even get Dark Knight until Heaven's Ward, because that was part of the first expansion, Heaven's Ward. I would personally get good with tanking with a couple other things, become familiar with that, and then ease your way into Gunbreaker. And then absolutely, you're probably going to need some sort of chart, some sort of flow chart in regards to how the rotation actually works, right? And also just reading your abilities works as well for a lot of people. You know, as it turns out, as we say in, you know, the trading card games, so your reading is tech. Not a lot of people read. Reading is tech. Gunbreaker is very divisive from a lot of people I've talked to because of the manageability and stuff. I know, what was it? Shirakami Fubuki from HoloLive. She ends up streaming Final Fantasy XIV a lot, and apparently she's an absolutely nutty Gunbreaker. So you can absolutely do some wild things with it, and it is a very fun class for the people that, you know, have said that they liked it.
Not discourage you. The base rotation is very simple in and of itself, so it's just a matter of planning your defensive cooldowns, of which Gunbreaker has plenty. Their self-healing isn't as good as Warrior or Paladin, but it's still noticeable and gives them considerable self-sustain. And also, let's be honest with ourselves, their aesthetic is absolutely banger. Choose this.
It does go hard. You could make a Bloodborne aesthetic very easily.
If you like to go sonic speed and you like a good balance between defensives and self-healing. Healers, this is the perfect role for you if the idea of trying the Carolina Reaper fills you with ecstasy. Or your main goal in life is to solve everyone else's problems, but never your own. Once again, don't be intimidated by the support title. Much like tanks, healing is very approachable in this game and forgiving. Heal potency is very high and the outgoing damage is weak, so you have a wide margin for error. The goal of healers is not to heal so much as it is to keep the party alive and deal as much damage of their own as they can. 6.0.
This actually goes back to the Jocat sentiment that damage, you know, damage is just mitigating more damage. Like dealing your damage will mitigate future damage, right? It's hard for the boss to hit you with another wipe mechanic if the boss is already dead, right? But absolutely, you have to make sure that you're looking around and you're having to make sure that, okay, is regen up on some people? Do I have the tank at a reasonable level? Will the tank get killed by this next hit? Is there something that I need to worry about? Am I standing in a wipe mechanic, right? There's a lot of things, and I feel you need just a lot more spatial awareness as a healer, but what I do and have played healers, they're all fairly awesome. Sage is pretty techy. Sage is actually quite nutty, and there's a lot of play to go with that. White Mage is probably my favorite. It is, for all intents and purposes, Baby's first healer, and Blood for the Blood Lily, as I hear. The Astrologian class is effectively playing Yu-Gi-Oh! To a degree. You just pull cards. They have simplified the card mechanic. It used to be a lot a lot slower. It used to be a lot more taxing. They've kind of, as far as at least going into Dawn Trail, they've really kind of shored that up a little bit, and it's the cards are very useful. They were always useful, but they're a little more approachable, if that makes sense. I still take issues with Astro because at least as of about 60, it still feels like it's 3 classes in one, and it's just a matter of me finding out the correct rotation. Astro, I would argue, will probably be one of the hardest healers to get into. Sage, you just have to really understand what your buttons do and what to charge, what not to charge, and it's also cool because you get Gundam funnel bits, little fangs, funnels, right? And it's interesting. Healing as a role, I have immense respect for healers. Scholar, I totally forgot them. Scholar levels simultaneously with Summoner, so if you get your Summoner 90, you will have a Scholar at 90. They're interesting because they have a little pixie and they get to do some fun shenanigans.
Made this even easier with the shorter cast times, meaning they can weave on every single DPS cast. As for cons, they really don't have much in the way of a DPS rotation, so if that's important to you, I suggest rolling tank or ranged. The balancing act between healing and DPSing comes together with practice, and because the game is designed to be friendly to new players, you'll have plenty of time to get the hang of things.
Yes.
White Mage is the pure healer that uses water, earth, wind, and holy magic. Just kidding, you're only going to get holy and water magic at level 90. Hey.
This is also the class that will actually burn your retinas, because oh my gosh, I had to start turning party effects off because I was in a dark room and my buddy was playing White Mage and he just kept casting holy. Oh, my retinas. Oh, I had a rough time that night. No, generally what your ARR rotation boils down to is you're going to cast arrow on the things you need to. You're going to make sure your tank is healed. You're going to make sure your party members aren't dying immediately, right? And in order to do mass AoE damage, you're going to start spamming holy. And it's a very simple rotation. It's a very effective rotation. Ladder tiers I still have to get to as I'm still growing my White Mage. I got to go through all the class quests and stuff as of this point in time. But I very much am enjoying White Mage. And it really is it's beauty in simplicity, if you will. You're not doing some cool shenanigans like Sage's, right? You don't have your card pulling mechanic and a couple other things that Astra has, like dropping you put the dropping your AoE kind of thing, your AoE buff, right? White Mage is very simplistic to get into. You'll figure out what's going on really quick, and then I argue it'd be easier to go into other healers, except probably Sage. Like the swap to Astro from White Mage was very, very simple for me because okay, this is your DOT. Okay, this is your your AoE, right? I think Astro has gravity specifically instead of holy, and you start knowing, okay, this is my AoE heal that gives you regen. This is my heal 2, my cure 2. This is my cure 1. This is my cure 3. And you just start going on down that list, and it's easily transitionable over. If you are new to healing, I would absolutely recommend White Mage.
Wait, I had you there. One of its strengths is that its base toolkit is very potent, so when things go to hell in a handbasket, White Mage can usually bring things back from the brink of death. Their spammable AoE, Holy, has a stun connected to it, which makes it convenient for dungeon runs. They also have a unique skill, Presence of Mind, that allows them to go even further beyond. They don't have many off-global cooldowns, but they do have the Lily system. It lets you save up to 3 strong heals at any given time, either single target or AoE. And it unlocks a Flatus Misery at the end, which is a big damage spell that gives back the DPS you lost from healing. So you're basically a Karen who constantly comes around asking for a refund. I'd say you should pick this job if it's important for you to be able to heal from the get-go, and you like seeing big numbers pop up on the screen. Scholar.
I do like me some big numbers. That's a call out.
It's a pet job shield healer and a walking r/I am very smart post. It requires you to keep an eye out for your fairy and properly position her so the heals can actually reach the party. But hey, in exchange for the hassle, you have a pet that can do a huge portion of the healing for you. This is where the green DPS meme comes from, and Scholar mains are probably tired of hearing it for 8 years. Their main healing mechanic is the Ether Flow system, which keeps their MP stable and is split between healing abilities and Energy Drain, a DPS skill that you use if healing isn't needed. They have good utility with a crit booster and a party-wide sprint. They do have more to learn compared to White Mage, but it isn't too difficult once you get used to it. One drawback is that they aren't quite as good at recovery when things go wrong, as their base heals aren't very potent. But Scholar is still a competent job and can do a great deal when in the right hands. You should pick...
I heard that there's some contention in regards to, and at least in Endwalker, as we're going, through 6.5 at this point, right? Going into Dawn Trail. I heard somewhere that Scholar and Ninja are kind of the 2 classes that have a really high skill ceiling, and unless you're on point, can kind of taper off in some of that end game content. I'm assuming like Endwalker Savage is what they're talking about specifically. And I mean, absolutely. I mean, you could bring in a white mage and have a easier skill ceiling. You could bring in a sage and have some of the utility and just instance that they offer, right? I do have a respect for scholars. I don't see many scholars personally. I have yet to actually delve into this class fully, and I actually really like Lucy Pyre's breakdown of it, and it actually makes me excited to try it, because as Astro with an awful rotation, you absolutely get MP just effed into the ground. It's wild. So this is very interesting for me, as somebody who's a very, I would agree, technical player, wants to understand mechanics, wants to understand their classes and encounters and stuff to just the utmost degree, and has a desire to do that. I feel like this is a very good breakdown of this, and I'm very excited to try it. That being said, make sure you summon your pet, much like what is it? Summoner, right? On DPS, right? I mean, these are effectively the same class, but split, right? Where Summoner has the Carbuncle and later the Eggies and then later the actual Primals versus, having Fairy right here. It's very interesting, is what I'm going to say. And, if it is just greed DPS, I thought that was actually reserved for Sage. But I'm very interested to try this out.
This job if you enjoy pet management and you want to provide utility without as much hassle as the Astrologian card system has. Astrologian is not to be mistaken with the person who dumped you because your Virgo vibes were too exhausting. They have a simple card management system that buffs the DPS of other party members. Connected to the cards is the seal system, which can buff their own MP regen, speed, or DPS depending on if you collect all three. Gotta catch 'em all, am I right? But all this utility doesn't mean they're a slouch in the healing department. They have an answer for any mechanic or fight. Need a regen? No worries. It's part of my kit. Need a shield? Oh sure. Let me just use my OP ability neutral sec that somehow survived the 6.0 purge. MP regen? Yeah. It's tied to my entire kit. Need to heal a difficult mechanic.
And this just showcases, like, here's the thing. Go into everything trying to learn something. You can go into 14 like I did, and I'm not going to know anything. Right? And I didn't. I still don't know anything, if I'm being completely honest. Sure, I can run Cruise Chaser solo unsynced, but so can a lot of other people. Sure, I can go into Savage, I can go into 08S and be like, okay, this head mechanic makes sense, right? This mechanic makes sense, right? But like, there's just a lot of understanding that comes with the game. There's a lot of growth that's going to come with the game. Go into everything trying to learn something. And I do this with Destiny. I do this with multiplayer games. I do this with when I attempt Halo and Legendary and the eventual lassos, right? If you can go into something and you can go in and learn something new every time, you will improve, right? So me forcing myself to learn to do Astro more, forcing myself to be able to understand the rotation, understand more of the mechanics and stuff, I will probably have a better time. It showcases, right? As Lucy's saying, oh, well, there's MP regeneration on everything in the kit. Okay, I'm playing this wrong, right? I'm sight reading this and I'm doing well. I mean, we're clearing dungeons and stuff, but clearly I'm doing something wrong. And I take it, it's such a cool thing. I mean, I've done this all the time in Destiny, where I push myself every Root of Nightmares run. I'm going to run orbs in first encounter. Second encounter, hey, I need one other person. I'll take orbs. I need you to take orbs, right? Because if I do ad clear at this point, I just fall asleep. I actually just fall. I do gaze on Nezarec consistently. I go to Volta Glass. I have no less than 2 oracles if I'm having a tired night. Or I'll do 3. I can maybe get to 4 at a certain location. But do I have to? No. Do I do this to push myself, to learn, to become better, to improve my skill levels, so that way I can eventually find a static and potentially even go ahead and do content with other 14 streamers, right? Which, I mean, that's a whole thing in itself. There's no this is a funny reaction. There are no expectations from this. And I think the 14 community is very special, and I want to do everything that I can to help people understand how amazing this game is. As somebody that has, played old school RuneScape, way back in 2000, it has a lot of similar isms. Who's tried World of Warcraft? Who's, currently still plays RuneScape? But, gotta go kill Zuck for the necromancy cape, right? And many other things in many other communities. And I survived Xbox Live Party Chat. That was wild. This game truly is something special. Yes, there is going to be a lot of pacing when it comes to Kurth. That's the end of ARR. Once you get into Heavensward, it's fine. It's a double-edged sword. ARR is, for all intents and purposes, the great filter. If you can make it through ARR, you're going to find a wonderful game. That being said, we have support coming to Xbox too at this point, so we're going to even have more people to showcase this. So videos like this that go into depth and showcase these are the jobs and things that I don't realize that I'm doing wrong. I'm getting MP effed. Okay, what am I doing wrong, right? We help each other grow. There's not this weird thing like you'll find in other games where it's like, lol, why'd we wipe, right? It's just absolutely wild to me. And this is point in case of why I like this game.
Mechanic macrocosmos, baby! They sound like they have it all, and they kinda do. But this can be a very fast-paced job when played at a high level, particularly for the average controller user. It's doable, but definitely has a learning curve. They can be a bit clunky, but they're an extremely strong healer packed full of party utility. So if you enjoy a challenge and this is a mountain you want to climb, it's a good one to choose. Sage is the new shield healer with the most confusing name to aesthetic ratio in the—
Oh my god, Sage is wild. I had to go ahead and do the intro mission. That took me a few attempts, but wow, Sage has some spice in their kit.
The entire game. My running theory is that it's just an acronym for Surgeons Always Gank Enemies. It's fast-paced and similar to Scholar. It has automatic healing built into its kit, which does require you to be continuously DPSing in order to keep it active, but hey, you're gonna be doing that on every healer anyway. It has tons of off-global cooldowns and even has a gap closer, making it the first healer with a unique self-movement option. Its gauge functions similarly to White Mage's Lily system and is tied to its NP Restore, which can admittedly suffer a bit when no healing is needed. They don't have any party utilities save for their
Sage, I will argue, is all gas. If you're looking at a healing job, White Mage, baby's first healer is how I've heard it. And that's not a derogatory thing as someone who loves White Mage. If you want Astro, you get to go play trading cards, you get to play Yu-Gi-Oh! While you heal, right? And there's so much cool utility in its kit. Scholar, as mentioned, green DPS. Sage, I will argue, is gas. It is a very fast-paced class. It's got a bunch of instants in its kit. It is absolutely just next level.
Massive off-global cooldown healing kit. But this job is fun to learn anyway. Mostly because lasers make my inner 9-year-old go sicko mode. Pick this job if you have prior experience healing in an MMO and you want slightly more DPS options than the other healers have.
Yes, absolutely. As somebody that just tried Sage, somebody who just cleared that mission, please go do other healers first. This is effectively the Gunbreaker situation, where if you want to try Gunbreaker, do the other tanks first. Do the other healers first. At least, I'd say get proficient with White Mage. You can try out Astro. You can try out Scholar. That's fine. I would, try them first and get a grasp on how healing works. Or if you're coming from another MMO, like say World of Warcraft, right, where I can't say RuneScape because RuneScape technically doesn't function like a standard MMO with how their kit works. It's a lot of self-reliance. That's how you get like Tazkalzuk and Disruption Shield, and there is in fact just best in slot stuff and abilities like Ingenuity Humans. But if you're coming from a standard MMO, I would argue a standard MMO formulaic, as in you got your jobs and your roles, right? And you have prior healing experience, or you feel comfortable as a healer, absolutely give Sage a try. Yeah, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Casters! Now this may come as a shock, but they cast spells and deal magical damage. The obvious benefit is that they don't need to be in melee range to deal damage. Every caster is easy to understand at a basic level, and they provide more DPS than the range class.
My beloved. There it is, my Black Mage.
As well having decent mobility themselves with their unique skills and slide casting. Still, they will have to sacrifice some mobility, and being forced to cancel a cast you'd almost finish just to dodge an AoE can trigger the old gamer rage.
It sucks.
They benefit from good positioning and situational awareness. First,
good positioning and situational awareness. Why I say Black Mage specifically, in order to play it effectively, you have to have a higher game knowledge. I'm not saying that this is the hardest class in the game by any means. What I'm saying, as somebody that fancies himself a Black Mage main and likes doing unsynced content as a Black Mage, consider that because you have to root and cast your spells, you need to know what AoEs you can tank and what AoEs you cannot tank. You need to know where these mechanics are going to be. You need to know, how it's going to come out. You need to know how much time you have in that mechanic. And I'm making it sound really complicated. It's really not, right? How long the boss is going to do a funny orange bar where it's going to hit you, right? Are you about finished with the cast? Yes, no. No? Okay, should probably move. Unless you're a Black Mage. Can I tank this hit? Yes, no? Probably. The healer's going to hate me, but that extra damage, Paradox at the 90 scale Paradox, oh my god, that is some disgusting amount of damage. Endwalker really put out with that.
Staff is Summoner, a pet class that has recently received a massive tummy tuck and facelift. This is the most approachable job in the entire game.
Yes, this used to have a 3-minute opener. In fact, if you know what the 3-minute opener is still, I encourage you, post it in the comment section, and I will pin it if I can find it, because that 3-minute opener in fact existed. And this is a far cry from what it used to be. And yeah, you just summon primals.
the
It's
base
great.
rotation isn't complex, it goes at a moderate to slow pace. They have good utility in the form of a battle race and Searing Light, which is a party-wide small DPS buff. They're extremely mobile, with the bulk of their cast being instant, making them reach ranged levels of mobility most of the time. Expectedly though, they do have the least DPS of all the casters. Unlike Scholar, their summons will handle themselves for the most part, so positioning isn't as much of a priority. They're also...
I think your ARR kit, because you go between your Emerald, I don't remember what your orange one is called, and then you have your Ruby, right? I'm totally blanking on what Titan is. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, and you go your Garuda, your Titan, and then your Ifrit because of the cast times. Your green is generally your fastest cast times, if not your instant. Your orange ones are your moderate cast time to damage kind of thing. Your red one is your big hit, and in an ARR, it's you get 4 casts of green, 2 casts of orange, I think it's 2 casts, and then 2 casts of red. And your red is because they have the longest cast times, deal the most damage, or at the end of that rotation.
Oh, extremely flashy. Are you seeing this shit? It's almost distracting. In fact, it is distracting. This is the only job that lets other players use a command to make your pet smaller. Even though this is an easy class, sometimes easy can still be pretty enjoyable, particularly when you're just starting out and learning. Take
Absolutely.
this job if you're new to the MMO genre, or you like to focus more on boss mechanics rather than rotational mechanics.
Just because your job is easy doesn't mean you can't enjoy the job. You could just say, hey, I want to summon Bahamut. I just want to summon Durgan. I just want to play Pokemon to it, even though it's technically going to be Beastmaster, right? But like a limited job. But like, hey, I want to play Pokemon with the Primals. Cool, go for it. Like, as far across the 14 community, there just generally is this acceptance. Do you want to do something? Yes, no. Yeah, okay, cool. That's fine. Yeah, go play that. Can you play this game? Yeah, that's fine. Oh, that's totally fine. Yeah, welcome aboard, right? Obviously, once again, you start getting into Savage content and Ultimate content. Okay, there's going to be a higher mechanical skill expected of you, but as far as I'm aware, 90% of people don't even touch Savage content, much less Ultimate content. That's, a specific group of players like me who likes raids and likes mechanics. Once again, I learned Destiny 2 raiding on Garden of Salvation. I had never run a Destiny 2 raid until like 2017. Well, Destiny raid in general, because I missed all of D1 raiding. Never ran a Destiny raid until D2, about 2017 or so, where I ran Garden of Salvation for the first time in LFG and learned it. I learned raiding off of that. And going into Omega Savage recently, it hits the same parts of my brain that does. If you can raid in that, if you can raid in WoW, if you can... Realistically, if you can do boss content like Tazkal Zuck or even Karapak in RuneScape, right, you'll be right at home here. It'll be like, yes, okay, this is the thing. And they introduce mechanics to you at a fairly reasonable pace. There's a twist mechanic in O12S, and I was going through post Stormblood at that point, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's just O12S mechanic. Or there's some big long stroke AoEs, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's just Colossus Cleave, right? And there's things that you'll just say because you saw it first there, and then you're able to just kind of use it down the line. The game actually introduces things to you at a very, very reasonable pace. As somebody that came from RuneScape, that blitzed all of Prif, blitzed Azazandra's Quest, blitzed God Wars 3, right? And I still don't know the entire correct rotations for a bunch of things, despite having things like FSO, despite having things... I'm using Blightbound crossbows. I don't have access to Zamorak bow. But you get what I'm saying, right? I went into 14 expecting... I'm expecting Savage content to be the norm. It's really not. In fact, I went back to like Heavensward after that. Sorry, not Heavensward. I went back to base Stormblood after that. I guess post technically. Like even post Stormblood, some of the last solo encounter in 4.5, right, 4.5 was cake compared to some of the stuff in Savages. You will be fine. You will absolutely be fine just running through the MSQ. The difficulty jump starts happening when you start going not into just raids, even though that's kind of a more gradual, but when you start going into Savages and Ultimates, that is your difficulty spike. If that is your content, it is restricted to that. And I think Unreal's is in terms of Fates, I think, right? It is from somebody who was expecting an absolute just difficult experience. I say this in the kindest way. It is very new player friendly.
Red meat is the French job of the series with memes that make me very homicidal.
Oh, no.
And yes, I am
Oh no, Lucy, that was bad.
slightly ashamed of that one. Other than that,
No, I gotta give you 10 points. You deserve a gold sticker on that one.
So it's a fun job that varies between being moderate to fast-paced with a simple rotation that's easy to understand at a glance.
I'm actually really bad at Red Mage. It is buy one spell, get the second free. You build your white gauge, build your black gauge. If you build your black gauge, I think it increases damage. If you build your white gauge, I think it increases healing, whatever one you build first. And then you're able to execute melee attacks, you're able to do stuff like that. As far as I'm actually aware, Red Mage, a lot of people say Red Mage is wonky. When you have new content released, like a new raid series or maybe a new Savage even, right? When you have new content release, people day one, week one will go in as Red Mage because it has so much versatility in its kit. It's unreal. It has your Dragoon backflip. It has resurrection, your resurrection, right, to resurrect a party member. It's got so much cool stuff in its kit, and it's very versatile. It is a veritable Swiss Army knife, right? It has so many things that it does, but doesn't necessarily specialize in them very well. So people will take this day one, week one, maybe even week two, depending on the time frame, right? And they'll go in with Red Mage and go, okay, this is required more here. And then they'll start phasing out the Red Mages to start phasing in other things. If you want a good, I guess, scouting class, absolutely feel like Red Mage. If you want to have your, I'm going to buy a spell, get the second spell free, and I want to do some build shenanigans, have gap closers, be able to jump back out, be able to res party members and heal party members if need be. If you want to just be a jack of all trades, Red Mage is absolutely right up your alley.
It's mobile, not as much as Summoner, but its dual cast mechanic makes every other spell instant. They have a melee combo with their sword, and it's pretty flashy. Actually, the entire job is prime aesthetic real estate. They have good DPS, and their main mechanic, the white and black mana gauge, is very forgiving. It also has a ton of utility with a battle raise, a decent healing spell, a party-wide DPS buff, and a magic defense and heal boosting shield. Honestly,
I just realized I should probably practice with my Red Mage because I have like full Diadocos for it now because I had to get full Diadocos for my Black Mage, which Diadocos is the highest crafted gear because I still at this point in time at the beginning of Shadowbringers, so I have a little bit of ways before I get to Endwalker. And Kip, you don't. And actually, here's the thing: if you're going into Dawn Trail, unless you are trying to push for just blitzing through all of that content, you don't need Diadocos. You can maybe go rent a seat, or you can just go your class gear. Like, there's no reasonably, unless you are blitzing and trying to go to like 95 in Dawn Trail, there is no reason you should be min-maxing with crafted, right? Diadocos, or getting your Tombstone gear, getting your raid gear, right? Because you're just gonna get higher level gear anyways, and it's gonna be really outdated halfway through Dawn Trail, I would argue, once you hit like 95, 96. So just a couple things to consider if you're worried about, oh, I don't want to buy Diadocos, the market is fluctuating so much. I get it. I totally understand. And even then, picking up something like Black Mage and even picking up other job roles, like most people in 14, I would say, will have 1 to 3 jobs that they can pick. And if you're in the comment section, I mean, I implore you to support or deny this statistic, right? I have a buddy, all he plays is Dark Knight. I have another buddy, all he plays is healers. Then you have me, who is still getting 90s. We finished Stormblood. We finished Stormblood with both Samurai and Ninja hitting 90 because I'm not a roulette addict. I'm not addicted to roulettes, chat. You can't prove it. What I'm trying to say is that it's very approachable EXP wise. As somebody that comes from RuneScape, a lot of my RuneScape isms are coming over into 14 to grind roulettes every day as much as I can to be able to hit these levels. And this is all to say, because this is actually a controversial thing in the 14 community, that you shouldn't level past your expansion, right? My game starts at 90. Like, if you've played RuneScape and you've gotten to 99 smithing, 99 mining, 99 strength, attack, defense, right? Your game starts at 99s, right? People have had 99 since God Wars Dungeon 1. And now people have, up to 120s in a lot of skills going into God Wars Dungeon 3 and in Zamorak, right? Where my game starts when I hit max level. Because I still got Savages to run. I still got Ultimates to run. I still got stuff like, not saying the name, the last trial of Stormblood base, that one, oh my god, that aesthetic is so good. I absolutely love that boss, right? I want to solo stuff like that. And it gets possible with certain classes, and it also increases my mechanical understanding. If I were to go to Red Mage, right, and get good at Red Mage, okay, I can see where I have openings to heal here, or I have openings that I could do this here, right? And I can transfer that over to Black Mage, I can transfer that over to Samurai, I can transfer that over to Warrior, I can transfer that over to White Mage, right? Because you're playing, because you choose to learn something new every single time, helps you understand other jobs. That being said, do not feel forced to engage in jobs you don't want to. If you just want to play Summoner, go play Summoner. If you just want to go play Blue Mage, well, you're going to have a hard time with that, actually, because you kind of need a not limited job to run content. Just do it. Don't let anyone tell Blue Mage gang rise up, am I right? Don't let anyone, kill your vibe. Don't let anyone tell you that your job isn't good enough. You can play 1, 2, 3 jobs. You don't have to play all of them like a lot of us choose to do.
They don't have many flaws, though they can be caught in a bad situation movement-wise if you don't manage your cooldowns properly.
Yeah.
This is a great job if you want the best of both worlds on the casting and melee front, and you love being able to assist the party in virtually any way it could need. Black Mage is UCP's golden child, and its design reflects that blatant favoritism. Their aesthetic is fire, ice, thunder, and void magic, so it's great for people who are edgy but aren't quite ready to take that leap into Reaper just yet. It has the best DPS of all casters and can outdo most melees, but it has no utility.
Interesting, actually. She's skipping. So the way that I learned it, and it could have changed over a couple patches, that there's the way I view Black Mage is there's routes of play, if that makes sense. Like, if you've ever played TCG, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, or whatever, like you have your base hand, oh, I can do this play, or I can do this play, or I can do this play, and these are the chain consequences of each of these plays, right? I kind of view Black Mage as that, with certain breaks in those plays, and that kind of helped me understand Black Mage. Generally, how I've seen the 90 rotation work and how I've engaged with it at this point is you will start off with your Ice 3. That'll give you your 3 little blue crystals up here, and then you will go to your, depending if it's a single target or an AoE, that's where you will go into Ice 4 or Blizzard, right? Blizzard if you're going against enemy, if you're going against an AoE, and then you have your Ice 3, which is if it's a single target. So say if I'm fighting Bahamut, right? Coils Bahamut, I'm trying to one phase him without him going through his extra mechanics. I'm going Ice 4, and then at that point I will go into Thunder 4, and then I will do Ice 1 to make sure the timer is recast. Then I will hit Fire 3, Fire 4, Fire 4, Fire 4. At this point, Paradox, because we have it, that replaces Ice 1 and Fire 1. Fire 4, Fire 4, Fire 4, and then I will finish off with Despair and start the rotation over. But what happens if you break at, the second Fire 2, right? I mean, realistically, there's nothing stopping you from just going with a quick swift cast Despair or something like that, rotating your position and doing that, starting the rotation all over again. Like, there's certain breaks in that you can actually get going. And Black Mage, because it does have this, it's ley lines. Ley lines, I think, increases cast time, or I guess decreases it technically, where it's faster to cast your spells. You want to be in your ley lines. So imagine if a boss starts throwing an AoE at you. Well, this is where my ley lines are. So generally what you do is you'll move off and then use between the lines and head back there, because you can warp right back to where your ley lines are. It does have a cooldown. It does run out and you will be off cooldown. That's why you have 2 casts of triple cast, which is absolutely amazing. But it is a very interesting class, and I would argue you have to know where to stand. You have to know what hits you can and can't eat, and you just have to kind of play it like a big brain mage, a big brain mage that's hurling masses of high damaging magic balls at people, right? And then you obviously get your polyglot in there, and then it just, you have a couple other OGC things that you can do, but it's really, really such a cool class. But I would definitely maybe do a couple of the other magic DPSs first.
And the least movement options of all casters in exchange. Yes. Still, they're no slouch in that department, as triple cast stacks give them great mobility when used well. The trick of this job is positioning so that you move as little as possible, because these cast times can take a hot second compared to, say, Summoner. This is where the healer adjust meme comes from. I'll be honest and say I don't think this job is super approachable to someone who's new, as all the movement cost from—
No, I am in fact the exception. I should not have gotten 90 Black Mage in ARR. I did that all through roulettes, and it wasn't even like it was by choice. I enjoyed Black Mage. I enjoyed the play style. I would not recommend it to you right out the gate. Get a little more experience under your belt and then swap over a little bit. I didn't start enjoying the game because I started with Pugilist. I started with like Pugilist, went over to Archer. None of it was vibing with me. Picked up Thaumaturge and it turned into Black Mage. And I'm like, this class, this is amazing. And I love it. Black Mage is actually just goated.
From learning mechanics could be pretty frustrating with canceling casts left and right.
Yes.
My suggestion is to play this job if you're looking for a challenge and you have prior experience with MMOs. Home on the range.
That being said, with that in mind, I will not be entering a Savage or an Ultimate with Black Mage unless I have that down to a T with other classes. That is my trade-off. I am absolutely a Black Mage main, and then you get into Samurai being, the Black Mage of physical DPS, which is true to a degree. However, that is a tall order. And I hear if you're going in like a party finder, I hear some groups may even potentially kick you, which it's just the high skill ceiling required for Black Mage and that type of content that can just take hours upon hours.
A role for people who need to keep their distance from the boss so they're not destroyed by its massive Chad energy. This is the home of the utility and maximum mobility squad, unless you're a machinist, but they'll have to wait their turn. Every ranged class is pretty simple. If from no other perspective, then the gist of this rotation is easy to understand. It's a forgiving role for beginners because you move as much as you want. Your main advantage is that your DPS stays the same whether the boss is 20 feet away or right on top of you, and you can maintain that even in situations where you're forced to be on the move. Casters,
as far as I'm aware as well, wow, what a pause champ. As far as I'm aware as well, you don't have any positionals, so you don't have to worry about, like, melee DPS is gonna have to worry about positionals. Like Dragoon, their Chaos Thrust has the wheeling one with the DOT that is behind. You have to be behind in your positionals, and your I think it's Vorpal Thrust, the second half of that is a flank. Or Samurai has their openers, I think it's Gecko, I think it's Gecko. I think that's a rear one. But then you have the pink sticker, and that's from the side. That's a flank. So you have to worry about positionals as melee DPS. But that's kind of the trade-off for the amount of sheer damage that they can do.
Could never. I mean, other than Summoner. Because of your utility, everyone's happy to see you in the dungeon. And the main con is you have the lowest personal damage of all the DPS roles. But with the ability to hop around the entire arena, who really cares, right? Bard is the OG.
I think that's incredibly fair, though, because and hear me out on this, because we'll see with Bard specifically, Bard gets like 2 DOTs and some pretty nutty OGCDs. Like when I was running Stone Vigil to level my Bard, I mean, it just became really simple. You could, so they're doing a pull, right? In any dungeon, really, it doesn't have to be Stone Vigil. You can get your Poison Arrow and your Wind Bite off on a target. You swap your targets with Tab or whatever you're going to use, right? Swap your targets and then go Wind Bite, Poison Arrow, Wind Bite, Poison Arrow, Wind Bite, rinse, repeat, right? And suddenly everything's taking DOT damage. And then you also have Peloton in your kit. Peloton just gets you from point A to point B faster. It's an out of combat, just everyone moves at the speed of sprint. So they're very utility focused, and, you know, free damage is free damage. Isn't there a Savage that ended up getting beaten because of a carbuncle or something like that? Don't underestimate DOTs. There's not many DOTs left. As far as I'm aware, they took out a lot of the DOTs. So being able to have that is, one, kind of nutty. Two, I mean, it's free damage during the pull. And that's the thing, is you're not hitting them 3-4 times to pull aggro off the tank. So just Wind Bite, Poison Arrow, everything, because they're instants, if I remember correctly.
Ranged role, and is definitely not suffering an identity crisis with its archer roots. Their gameplay is on the more fast-paced side, with lots of proc-heavy mechanics that can have you double weaving here and there. They have 3 songs to maintain, and each one does something different that gives Bard a somewhat more unique playstyle than the others. What's more, their songs are constantly buffing the party. That means Bard is singing and slinging arrows and moving while dealing with mechanics. What an icon. The rotation itself isn't too difficult. Any problems you face will probably be related to not being able to use procs on time without clipping your GCD. This is a job that starts out very easy and has a natural progression towards getting more complex. Take this if you like your job to grow with you, so to speak, and having unique methods of party support sounds essential to you. Dance.
I'm actually saving this. This is probably going to be like the last one that I level, because I have to spend a little bit more time with it. It starts out very, very easy. You get, you know, drip fed your abilities. You get drip fed your Poison Arrow, you get drip fed your Wind Bite, you get drip fed your I think it's like Blood Arrow. You get drip fed a lot of stuff. And then, you know, past 50, I'm curious what the kit's going to get, because mine's still at 50, and I need to spend the time to actually learn it in comparison to something like Machinist, where I'm just able to pick that up. Machinist is a very interesting class.
Sir is a role popular with cat girls who idle in Limbs of Lamensa. Wonder why that is. Anyway, other than Summoner, this is an approachable and easy job that I can happily recommend to newcomers. Their primary buffing mechanic is the dance partner Tether, the strongest DPS buff in the game. They can pick one single DPS as their partner at the beginning of an instance and not really need to worry about it after. But wait.
The rule of thumb, always choose your dance partner.
There's more. Along with heals and a defense boosting skill, its mobility may be the best of all jobs because of its 3 dash charges, which lets it escape bad situations in a second. On top of all that, the changes in 6.1 have only made this job easier. It's not ridiculously flashy, but it's fun to look at, and it fills its dancing aesthetic well. I'd recommend it to players who want a simple DPS job that's got more utility than Summoner. Machinist is a role that wields abominations that should never be called guns. It's considered the selfish range DPS that's meant to have the most damage in the role, while boasting—
It kind of is, actually. It kind of is. I will 100% Yeah, no, I back that. That is valid.
Much less utility compared to the others. Its pace ranges from very fast, with lots of moments where you need to weave in off-global cooldowns, to slowing down considerably when the cooldowns are running. They've got a high-tech aesthetic that stretches out to more than just guns, as they also have turrets, drills, flamethrowers, bioblasters, automaton queens,
Yes.
and a chainsaw. Though this job is potentially a serial killer that has an aesthetic you're not going to find anywhere else in the game. One drawback is that this job is heavily punished for bad ping, so take that into consideration if you live far from your server. It's not the most approachable job, but it's definitely doable. I'd suggest playing this if you'd like to be highly mobile and you're not too concerned with the utility aspect of the ranged role.
Realistically, you are clicking a lot of buttons. You have a lot of things to do. You got to build your heat gauge, you got to expel your heat gauge, and then that refuels your OGCDs. You have your OGCD for AoE and range specific. It is a wild job to get into. And for me, I picked it up just fine, at least, going 50 to even 60 at this point. I picked it up very, very easily. That being said, I will get some game experience under your belt a little bit before you try it. I think you also have to get to Heaven's Ward for that one as well. Get a little bit more experience and then pick it up, because it'll probably be more approachable to you than the same as like Black Mage right out the gate. It gets a little sus real quick.
Yes, the world of the melee is a heavily populated one indeed. It's easy to see why, as they tend to look sick as fuck and have higher DPS potential than most of the jobs from other roles. It's all about the big numbers, baby. They also have higher survivability, with DPS gear that has the best defensive stats out of the bunch.
I'm like looking, oh, okay, so this is the area. Was that Lucy Pyre making a joke about Dragoons jumping? That's why we were on the moon? Is that a subtext joke? I approve of that.
They all have good utility, save for Samurai, which I'll talk about more later.
Sam is interesting.
On average can be a little bit more complex, but they're still not too bad once you get the hang of it. Their main drawback is pretty easy to guess. They have to stay in melee range to maintain their DPS, and it can take time to get the exact spacing for max melee range down to a T. These classes may take a while to master, but rest assured that it's very possible, even if you're new. Dragoon is a wonderfully flashy job that's haunted by its past of being a floor tank, which isn't really deserved, because all melees spend time tanking the floor, and it doesn't deserve to be singled out like that. It has a busy rotation with lots of off-global cooldowns to weave, but the 6.1 changes have helped fix some of the animation luck issues attached to the jumps. For a starting class, it's honestly not the most approachable if you're starting from level 80, but if you're planning to go from level 1, it has...
No, not from 80. No. I could not play Dragoon with any amount of finesse that I currently have if I did not start at level 1 Lancer. If you're going to play Dragoon, I would absolutely recommend that you pop in at Lancer level 1 and then just move away. It's a very cool class, though. In the class quest, you actually get extra lines if you do the class quest before finishing a Realm Reborn, and you get some extra lines as well throughout the story. It's very, Heaven's Ward specifically, it's very interesting, and it's got a DOT in its kit. It's got some positionals it's got to worry about. It's got like Dragon Eyes or something like that. It's got a buff where you buff yourself and a party member. It's got a lot of cool stuff in its kit. Dragoon is one of those ones that I absolutely want to get to max when I can, because it is a very fun rotation. You get your jumps. I think your jumps are still tied to if you're in the air. So if you're, say, the target dummy is me and I jump, and a AoE was going to hit me, or an attack from a boss was going to hit me, but I jumped it would still hit me because I'm still coded to be on the ground. So be aware of that with Dragoon jumps. As far as I'm aware, that is still a thing, because you are not in the, you still have to have a location on the ground. So just be aware of that. But no, Dragoon is incredibly flashy, and it is a lot of fun to play.
It has a natural progression of ramping up the difficulty bit by bit. It has average mobility with a few jumps that can close the distance, and a backwards jump that has caused some memes to occur. It has great utility with a DPS boosting tether and a party-wide crit buff at its disposal.
But the party-wide crit buff is actually really great. Yeah, you weave in some of your buffs like that, and your party just absolutely goes ham. With Dragoon specifically in its backflip, and this also extends to Reg Mages as well, be careful what arena you jump back in, because like Titan EX, right? Or even Titan in general, if you time your, because you have to go back a certain amount of distance, you can just jump off ledges. And what, oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, there are certain bosses I hear that they are designed that you cannot backflip on, or you will just abyss yourself. But I guess if you move forward and then you jump back, you could technically do it. Some little extra finagling is required. I've even seen, which is really funny, when I'm doing dungeon runs, I've seen a Dragoon, while we're doing a pull, right, he'll turn around and then he jumps backwards to get that extra mobility. And I'm like, what an absolute Chad strat for Dragoons.
My main complaint with this job is that they'd be better off with cone AoEs rather than line AoEs, but it's not hard
I
to
could see
get
that.
used to. I picked this
I could see that, actually. I could absolutely see that.
job if you love the aesthetic and you like the feeling of always having something to do in your rotation. Ninja is the masochist of the DPS group that likes to be publicly humiliated for messing up its rotation. Yes, if you mess up the Mudra mechanic, the devs have decided the entire party should be able to know. So this job isn't for you if you don't like wizard bunnies. Because of that, you'll need to memorize a few different combinations for Mudra, but it's very easy to pick up and memorize quickly. It has a speed buff that it needs to maintain, so it's a fast-paced job. Mobility-wise, it's not too bad, with Shikuchi that requires you to ground target to move, which, once again, can be a pain for controller users, but they can also maintain a bit of uptime with their Mudras, so some can be cast from afar. This job isn't the most approachable of all or anything, but it's still not too difficult to pick up and do decent numbers with.
No, absolutely. As long as you have some cognizance and mechanical ability, like, I am an awful ninja. And a lot of that has to do with I actually click a lot of my buttons with my mouse, and I don't actually use my buttons like I should be. So I have to click my Mudra, and I rabbit myself more than I'd care to admit. Like you can see the VODs. There's a lot of times where I'll rabbit myself. But no, Heavensward actually fixed a lot of that. I think it was the end of Heavensward where you get this one, this ability. It's like, you just give yourself Huton, which, running Crystal Tower Q. I'm sorry, not Crystal Tower Q. I mean, Alliance Raid Q. Same thing. There are plenty of times where I'm just like, man, this would help my rotation so much, just be able to Huton just really quick. And it just comes down to, like, generally how I keep my stuff up. And this could absolutely be the wrong rotation, or this could be the wrong rotation for above 60 and 70. And I absolutely implore, if you have understanding and mechanics that, or even tips, I'm absolutely welcome them. Like, I read as many of these comments as I can, and I'm always looking to improve my game, because I do want to hit the ultimate and savage tier and be able to do, raids and stuff with other Final Fantasy creators. I think it'd be really cool. However, the way that I'll end up doing is I will usually drop my Doton. It's just a giant F off AoE. And then I'll make sure I have my Huton up to make sure that I'm able to have shorter cast times, right? And then I'll go to, like, Suiton, because you need, your water buff to do certain things. You have access to Katon, you have access to Raiton. Fire and Lightning. Fire's your AoE. Lightning is your single target. It's just your quick ones. You also can access your Fuma Shuriken, which is just your single. There's a lot of cool things with the Mudras in the kit, and it also gets a lot of the cool abilities that... It gets a lot of the cool abilities that melee DPS do. We have Arm's Length. We got Bloodbath for some DPS. We got True North right here, which is going to be your, hey, I can't actually hit this boss right now from where I'm supposed to, because a lot of your attacks are rear positionals. So I'm just going to not deal with that. And that's actually how Samurai actually opens up its kit at 90, is with True North as well. It's a very cool class. It is very mechanically heavy. You are very squishy. It does have a mitigation. Hide and Shadows is like a 20% mitigation or something like that. I have unfortunately on stream become the tank on a whim as Ninja, just because tank ends up dying, or tank eats a hit that they probably shouldn't have. One thing leads to another, and Kip generally ends up being the tank regardless of what role he's playing. You will find this is more often than not the thing, and we laugh about it, but it also pushes me to be better, right? Oh, everyone just died. Let me hide in shadows real quick. Let me get my 20% mitigation up, and let's start pulling this back a little bit. And it is such a fun game. Like, if you did that in WoW, right? What happens if you did that in WoW, where suddenly your squishy DPS has to be the tank, right? I'm sure there would be some choice words said in chat, but generally it's just like, oops, my bad, right? And even then, sometimes we laugh about it. It's great. No, this is why I like 14.
This job is a good choice if you're okay
You are
with a bit
encouraged
of
to learn.
memorization and having slight range potential on your melee sounds good to you. Monk proves that being loyal to Buddha isn't about how much you can meditate. It's about how hard you can punch a cat girl directly in their sinful adventure.
Dude, these adventurer plates are wild. They 100% are.
To a plate. Recently, it received an overhaul of this expansion, so lots of things are different from before. They have good utility in the form of Brotherhood, and because it comes with a built-in speed buff, it's decently fast-paced.
I like the meme. What is it? The meme of the entire hotbar that's just Dragon Kick, and someone's like, this is Monk. I absolutely love it. It's perfect. Monk, I think, is the only physical DPS that lacks a range. I think it is a gap closer, but it lacks a ranged attack where you have like NP as your samurai, your ninja has the throwing knives. You have ranged attacks you can still do. I think Monk is the only one that does not have a ranged attack, at least as
While they do
Endwalker.
have off-global cooldowns to deal with, they're not as reliant on them as some jobs are. They've got good mobility with 3 stacks of gap closer, which is necessary because this job is punished the most when you need to keep distance from the boss.
Yes.
They have high DPS, and while this job's rotation did confuse me at first glance, I realized how simple it was during the short leveling process.
Oh,
If
yes.
even an idiot like me can do it, you'll be fine. Pick
A
this.
professional dingus. So I started with Pugilist and I went over to Black Mage, but I eventually picked up Pugilist again. And when I got Pugilist and Monk and I leveled them, I'm like, oh my god, this is like silly amounts of damage. Like the rotation is very forgiving. You get your little stickers and stuff. You build your things, right? It is absolute just hilarity how hard Monk hits. It's wild. And even then, I was doing Nidhogg in Trial Roulette. I'll just play Nidhogg on occasion, just help people through it, just in queue. I help make their queue times faster, right? And I was tanking in Nidhogg, and the Monk outlived me at Nidhogg. We wiped on where Nidhogg summons the 3 dragons, right? That one. Yeah, we wiped on that. It was me as a warrior with self-sustain and the Monk up, and the Monk outlived me. You have some crazy survivability.
Job if you like to do big numbers and DBZ is your favorite enemy. Reaper is the spoiled brat of the melee DPS that gets anything it wants because it's the newborn baby. But I mean,
I'm sweating because I know Samurai is next. I know Samurai is going to be the last one. I'm expecting some shenanigans. No, Reaper, I hear, is absolutely stupid easy to learn. I have not done it yet, and in fact, me and one of my mods, we end up running content unsynced all the time. He'll run Reaper, I run Samurai, and I constantly just try to outdamage him with the rotation because they kind of fight for that place. You do have to, as Reaper, worry about a couple positionals. I think Gibbet and Gallows both are positionals, which I'm like, hey, Reaper has positionals. No, they don't. Yes, they do. I read the ability. He's like, oh, I guess it does have positionals. He still puts out buku damage regardless, despite not actually. And that's the thing is, he helped me get up to about Stormblood in terms of content. So he's taken a hiatus from like Endwalker Alliance raids, Endwalker raids, variant dungeons and stuff like. He took a hiatus from that. So it's things just seep out of the brain over time. So even if you don't do your positionals the way you're supposed to, you can still just do buku damage as Reaper. It is so good.
I mean, don't take me as bitter or anything. This is a really fun job to play, and everyone and their mom's dog likes it. It has a simple rotation, and
Yes.
I'd say it's the most approachable melee by a good bit. This is partly because it has very few off-global cooldowns compared to the other melee. It plays
Yeah.
at a moderate speed with some fast-paced moments in their edgy avatar form, but it's all very manageable.
I think you also have one of the best mitigations in the game. It's the orb, the sphere around you. I don't remember what it's called. Reaper mains and Reaper players know what I'm talking about. Isn't it one of like the best mitigations in the game?
Their AoE rotation is also insanely satisfying and looks cool as hell. It has good mobility with Ingress and is the only melee that can cast spells from a distance. Its utility is great, with Arcane Circle buffing damage and Arcane Crest putting a potent regen on the entire party when broken. Don't ask me how a Reaper is healing people. I choose not to think about it.
I think it was Arcane Crest. I thought it was a mitigation, but no, Arcane Crest goes really hard.
Because of how simple and fun this job is, I highly recommend it to any new players who want to try melee, or just people who want to experience a rewarding gameplay loop. I would say that Samurai is the job for weeaboos, and I would be correct. But it goes...
Yeah. That's the one, make Yoshisui. I had to learn the 90 rotation, at least the openers. Like you make Yoshisui, you true north, you hop in, you do your gecko, you do your triple, and then you do your 3-sticker EI Jutsu. You do the follow up to that, and I can't remember. You weave in some of this at some point. The 90 rotation is not hard. It takes a little bit to remember, but you absolutely output a just boatload of damage, so much that I would argue it's disgusting. Like I will regularly just I'll go back and do EX content. I actually did go back. I went and did solo. It wasn't EX, but I did Lakshmi. I did that solo as Samurai Unsynced, and it got a little sus. Don't get me wrong, it got close at the end, but Samurai just puts out a lot of damage. If there's a boss that has a lot of HP, at least for the expansion it's in, it's got to be Lakshmi. She has a mountain of HP.
A bit deeper than that. Samurai is for degenerate weeps. Normal weeps should go back to ninja where they belong. Fair warning that it's also received some very controversial changes that may be reverted, so please note that the experience may be different soon.
Yeah.
Anyway, Samurai is a moderate to fast-paced job that needs to maintain a DPS and speed buff to do maximum damage. Its sim system lets it use 3 unique EI jutsus, which are all good for different situations and will...
Your one is going to be your Higanbana. That's going to be your DOT, which is actually a very good DOT, might I add. Your 2 is going to be your AoE, which goes along with your AoE rotation. And then your 3 is going to be your big hit.
Always crit. They have the Kinky gauge, which is used for your mobility, which is about...
Hold up, what?
for different situations and will always crit. They have the Kinky gauge, which is used...
Okay, I know she's saying kinky. It comes across as kinky, and if you've seen Lucy Pyre streams, you know exactly where this is going. And now I'm going to call it the kinky gauge. Thank you, Lucy Pyre, for that. As somebody that plays the black mage of melee DPS.
For your mobility, which is a backstep and a gap closer. Other than that, you mostly use Kenki to spam a filler DPS move called Shinten. It's relatively approachable and easy to understand, meaning you can pull good numbers with this job without 100% knowing what you're doing. In exchange for having the best melee DPS, it has no utility to speak of, so when things...
This does change between patches, I hear. There was that one ability that helped with crits, right? That got removed, which was a very controversial change for a lot of players. Some players loved it, some players hated it. That being said, I hear it flip-flops. There's good argument that some patches it's Reaper, some patches it's Samurai. It just depends on the patch. So me, as somebody that wants to, you know, play everything, yeah, I'm going to level Samurai and Reaper regardless. That being said, just go into this knowing that sometimes you might be the best physical DPS, especially on how you do things. And I argue that comes down to using a lot more positionals than your Reaper would. Yes, Jib and Gallows have positionals, but your Gecko requires your rear, which is your that the green one. No, it's the greenish one, because the blue is a static, right? Your Yukikaze is a static. You can just hit wherever, and then your pink one is going to be your flank, and you have to use those, especially when you're off cooldown from your Meiko Shisui. You have to actually build up your combos again. So you have your 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2, and you're having to use the positionals a lot more. I think that's where the bonus damage starts coming up, as well as your OGCDs as well, because you have some just buku damage you can do with that as well. So understand there's a lot of technical play regarding that. I think if I had to say offhand, I think Reaper is a little more easier to get into. It's a little more manageable. You could probably do it a lot better, get into it easier at a lower skill level. But Samurai is, if you enjoy Black Mage, you most likely will enjoy Samurai as a Black Mage main.
Go south. Samurai kinda just has to shrug. Because it might get reworked soon, I can't outright recommend it to new players until at least 6.2. But if you're determined to try it out, I'd recommend it to players who value high numbers and only want to focus on their own damage, and would rather let the rest of the party do their own thing. And we also have Blue Mage. Wait, holy shit, I already did every valid job. Man.
Lucy Pyre, you wound me.
That truly got lost in the 19 job sauce. I'm not sure if anything I said made sense, but if nothing else, I hope you're a little bit closer to jumping into Eorzea with the same confidence of a neckbeard who immediately chooses to play a cat girl and never thinks twice. Have a wonderful day. And may
Joke's on you. I've thought about playing Aura a number of times.
Yoshi P have mercy on your soul.
Yeah. This was amazing. I actually really liked going through this. This was a very good breakdown, in my opinion. This was a very, very good break. This art alone is why I'm going to start calling it the Kinky Gauge. I absolutely loved this. No, this was great. If you are new to 14, if you're existing to 14, if you're in 14 and like, damn, I want to play the game, but I'm thinking about trying a different job. Oh, wow. I think you have a video here for you. And at the very least, yes, absolutely. Things can change over time. Things get rebalanced. Some kits lose things. Some kits gain things. However, I mean, with anything, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve to a lot of things. But not only that, just play what you think is cool. Do you want to be an absolute weeb? Go play Ninja or Samurai. Do you want to be a filthy Black Mage like me, right? Go for it, right? No one's saying don't. If you want to go play big heals, I'm a tank everything, face tank everything. I am the wall, and you're gonna deal with me. Go play warrior, right? If you want to you want basic heals, go play White Mage, right? There's a job for everything. Blue Mage is different because it's a limited job. And I'm curious where Pictomancer is going to fall in this. I do hope that Lucy Pyre does come back to 14 at some point. I do know that other things have taken Lucy Pyre's time, which is absolutely fair. I mean, to a degree, you have to want to chase the algorithm. But two, if you're enjoying something else, especially because Lucy Pyre is caught up with 14, right? And I hear the content drought, especially when you're at endgame, gets a little rough. That, if pursue what you're going to pursue. And I have nothing but respect for Lucy Pyre. Not that she's going to watch this, because this is an incredibly long video. For Lucy Pyre, thank you for putting this out. As somebody that has gotten into 14 over the last year and is absolutely blitzing through the game and, has already had my taste of Savage content, this was amazing. This helps onboard a lot of players. And while some people could be like, well, this is technically out of date, this tracks, though. This is how, Do you need help choosing a job? There's your decision making. In my opinion, this is one of the best videos I've seen for this specific purpose. But alas, what do you think about this video? What do you think about your specific job? Do you think that there's something that I missed in this? Do you have something you want to share about your specific job? What are your thoughts on Savage and Ultimate content? What are your favorite classes to go to? Do you think that some of these jobs are easier to pick up now? Do you think they're harder to pick up now? Let me know in the comment section. And as you all know, you can see this little border around the video. That is strictly due to, I did reach out to Lucy Pyre via email in regards to React content. She said that it's perfectly fine to direct your content. However, her one request is that this should not take up the entire screen, which is why I am using my border, my little fancy border here. And for anyone that is looking at reacting to Lucy Pyre's content, I would ask that you please observe and respect her wishes in regards to it not taking up the whole screen. That has been kind of my PSA on that. But let me know in the comment section all the fun stuff, and I will see you all in the next one.